Hey everyone, it's me, Alana, and I've chosen to do PECS, or Picture Exchange Communication System, as my assistive technology for our course this summer. So the acronym PECS stands for Picture Exchange Communication System, and the name is very, very telling of what the whole purpose of the program is. So essentially you're using small picture cards to encourage children to develop their spontaneous communication skills, as well as make choices, follow a schedule. There are a lot of different ways you can use the picture cards themselves, which a lot of people call PECS. But PECS is also an acronym for the program itself, which is a 6-step process to help these children make choices, communicate their likes and dislikes, comment on things that are going on, etc. So this particular intervention was originally produced by a company called Pyramid Educational Consultants Incorporated before people had access to computers and laminators and could create all of their own resources, before Teachers Pay Teachers, Pinterest, all of that. A lot of folks would actually buy these picture cards in a kit, which you can still buy a lot of these resources online, but as I'll get into later, it's quite simple to make them yourself to use in your classroom. So children on the autism spectrum, particularly nonverbal students, were the ones that this program was essentially created for in the first place. So it was developed in 1985 at the Delaware Autism Program by Lori Faust and Andy Bondi, which were two clinical speech pathologists. And the whole point of the system was to teach functional communication skills with a focus on communicating spontaneously. And based on a current body of research, it is proven that strategies such as PECS really do encourage children to develop verbal communication, because it really helps them be an active communicator with their friends, family, peers, teachers, and really gets them more involved in their learning. So getting into what the physical cards would actually look like. Generally, you would use a program. A really popular one out there is Boardmaker. So if you don't buy a kit that has pre-made pieces in it, or you might need particular pieces featuring your students' pets or particular snacks they like. So you would log in. A lot of times your school district would have a couple different licenses to Boardmaker that could be shared by SLPs, physical therapists, occupational therapists, the special ed department. You log in, there's a little search feature. I tried to do a screen grab, but it wasn't really letting me. Choose what size grid you want. Do you want 3-inch squares or 2-inch squares for your cards? And that would really depend on your student, their vision, their fine motor skills. You select the picture you want, and there are a ton of clip art options. There's a web search feature, or my favorite, which is the ability to upload your own real-life photographs. So if you wanted to do a picture of their mom for their card mom, that is much more effective than uploading a cartoon picture or selecting a cartoon picture of a mom. Or if you want to do some snack options, it might be better to use a realistic picture of the trail mix they bring in rather than a cartoon version. So there are a lot of options on Boardmaker. I like to print them out on oak tags so they're nice and sturdy, because your students are going to be peeling these, as we'll get into later, in and out of their book. So I like to print them on oak tag. I use the hard laminator, or run them through the thin laminator a couple times, and secure the Velcro on the back. So if your district or the SLP, the IEP team decides that PECS are going to be the student's primary means of communication, or that's what you're going to start using before transitioning to an electronic device like an iPad, it might be worth it to invest in a PECS workbook. So generally you can order these online. They're around $20 to $30. It's like a very sturdy binder with a top that is designed for a sentence strip and to store choices that you're working on. It's kind of like your built-in workspace. And then the inside is a binder with reinforced, really heavy-duty plastic pages with dividers, so you could have pages for food choices, break choices, family members, friends, different things like that. Of course, if you're in a pinch, you might be waiting for funding to come in, or you're not sure if you're going to stick with PECS, you could always create your own very similar binder just to begin with. I've made some with just some sturdy plastic see-through binders with some Velcro on them, and then some laminated sheets on the inside. So there are definitely options. You don't have to purchase the fancy workbook. However, if it's going to be your student's primary means of communication, they're going to be getting it to and from home, it might be worth it to invest and just get the nice heavy-duty binder, which I believe you can order right on Amazon. Okay, so now we'll get into the 6 phases or stages of PECS. So before you even get into the first phase, the manual tells you that you want to create an inventory of reinforcers or items the student really enjoys. So first, before you would even implement the whole system, you would look and see which objects your students are gravitating towards. Particular toys or break activities or jelly beans, things that your students are really into. And as we know, working with kids, these things are constantly changing. So the literature for PECS really highlights the fact that you want to make sure they're things that are consistently motivating, or, if it is motivating to them one day and it's not anymore, you just would have to find something that is motivating and create a new set of cards for them. You want to make sure they're items that the kids really want. So once you have established the reinforcers, you get into phase 1. So students are learning to exchange the card for these preferred items. So let's say the preferred item was jelly beans. They would hand you the card, you would give them a jelly bean. You would practice. Of course, we don't want to get over the top using food. It shouldn't always be food, but oftentimes that's something that's really motivating. And if you're using something small, in moderation, it should be fine. Or if the student wants a sticker, every time they hand you the card, you would give them a sticker. And you just do this until they lose interest in the activity. But of course, the manual goes into a lot more detail about how long you should be practicing for, and so on. The second phase is called distance and persistence, and that is where you are really trying to help them generalize these skills. So the whole idea is that now the students are not only sitting at their desk using PECS workbook or sitting in your classroom on the carpet, they're going to be in another location in the building, so maybe in the library or in the cafeteria, or maybe another adult in the classroom that's trained in the program is going to be working with them. You don't always want it to be the same person in the same place, because we want to make sure they're generalizing. For the third phase, that is the picture discrimination. So this is when you would incorporate 2 of their preferred items. You would take them out of the binder, put them on the top of the binder, which is your workspace, and you would have them choose between 2 things, and you will always give them the one they choose. It might not be the one they want, but you're hopefully trying to help them make the association that they are making a choice, and you are giving them what they've chosen. So for the fourth phase, that would be a very simple sentence. So students will be using a card like I want or I need, and it might be a hand reaching out, and then you're trying to use the I want with their preferred object. Stage 5 would be answering questions. So now you're using what do you want, and you're hopefully trying to get them to select their own card to represent what they want. And lastly, for 6, that's when the students will get into commenting. So now students are taught to comment in response to questions like, what do you see? What do you hear? What do you feel? So this stage, of course, wouldn't happen. The students are very, very comfortable using the system, and a lot of times it takes a very long time for students to even reach stage 6. Some kids are, using up to phase 3 for a while, and they have not mastered the skills to be able to answer questions. So it really depends on the student, and of course there are a lot of details that are in the training manuals and available online that go into a little bit more detail about what you should be doing in each of the stages. So something I wanted to clear up before going further in my presentation was just the difference between PECS as in the picture cards themselves and PECS the program. So many people call the picture cards PECS as a short name for them. You might say, I need PECS for break choices. PECS is also the acronym for the 6-step system. So while I wanted to give a background of PECS, the system, for my project, I also want to point out that you can use picture cards through Universal Design for Learning to help all of your students with behavior management, organization, schedules. There are so many ways that you can use the picture cards themselves in your classroom to help a ton of different learners. A really popular way to use the picture cards are for visual schedules. So even if you are working with students that are not on the autism spectrum, maybe they're not struggling necessarily with communication, but maybe they have a hard time following a schedule. Or maybe they have some behavior issues and they have a hard time transitioning between activities. You can use a picture schedule to remind them of what they're supposed to be doing. A really popular way to use them is to line them up on a clipboard. You attach a bag to the back of the clipboard, and as the student completes the task they're supposed to, whether that's cleaning up their area, washing their hands for lunch, they would remove that card and place it into the bag. In my classroom last year, we also used a lot of picture cards using the same clip art type photos from Boardmaker to label all of our classroom supplies for some of our emergent readers. So we would have glue sticks. We would have a peck for that on the bucket of glue sticks, and it would also say the word glue stick to kind of help them make those connections between the words and the items in the classroom. Same thing for their pencils, scissors, their cubby area. We would use PECS all around the classroom just to help them link these pictures to the spelling of the words. Another really important way to use them could be for behavior management. Lots of folks have first then cards. That has been really helpful for students on the autism spectrum or with behavioral problems. First you do this, then you get this. It could be a simple plastic card with first math with a picture of an addition sign, then playground with a picture of the swings outside so that they have a visual. First I have to complete this, then I get my reward. So there are many, many ways, and if you just make a quick, simple search on Pinterest for picture exchange communication or picture cards, there are so many ways that you can find to incorporate them into your daily routine. So there are many pros and cons with using the PECS system. So if you're using the 6-step process and following it to a team, and you're taking the students' workbook everywhere with them, into the community, all around the building, to help them actively engage, that can be really helpful for their communication. However, if they go somewhere that is unfamiliar, so let's say your student goes to lunch somewhere other than at school where they have the same few choices that are in their book, they might not be able to select something from the menu because they might not have a card for that specific sandwich on the menu. So the paper version of the book is not always super conducive to transitioning students out into doing activities in the community. It's better for making choices every day. You know, every day we either have cereal or pancakes in the cafeteria. It's one or the other. That being said, something that's awesome about Boardmaker and why I really love Boardmaker is that there is now an app. So if you're trying to transition your student from using the paper version of the workbook to the app, you can do so really effortlessly, and buttons can be added literally in 3 seconds. So if you go to a restaurant with your child that is using this system, and you notice that none of the options on the menu are in the Boardmaker app, you can quickly add the on right there, so on the spot they can make that choice, and you wouldn't have to go through the whole process of selecting it, printing out a card, laminating the card, and adding it to the book. The book can also be a little bit cumbersome to transport. Lots of students have straps for their PECS workbook that they carry around with them, but that's not always easy on the playground, in the cafeteria, times when you would have to be a little more hands-free in art class. If there's not really able to set down the book, it might kind of hold students back from fully participating that way. Another thing is that it can be tricky for folks with fine motor skills. We have had students in the past that were working, in stage 2, let's say, of the PECS system, and they were really struggling with pulling the cards off of the Velcro board. So sometimes it can be a little bit tricky to use the cards themselves. But again, for the pros, it's great that you can use real images, that there are multiple uses, and that it's really very user-friendly. You can look at the PECS handbook with the help of other professionals in your school setting. You can really teach yourself, or if your school provides trainings, you can really learn how to use the system in the correct way that it's intended, you know, of course with support of other folks in your building that might be familiar with using it. So it's definitely something you can kind of teach yourself. So just to wrap up my presentation, I'd just like to remind everyone that whether you are deciding to choose the PECS system as your student's primary means of communication or to help improve their communication skills, or if you're simply utilizing these picture cards to enhance the experience of all of the students in your classroom, it's just a great choice to me personally overall. I think sometimes keeping it simple is really the way to go, and PECS really provides a really simple way of communicating, or a really, really simple kind of support that you can implement into your classroom. You could think, oh, you know, the students are really having a hard time finding these materials. What can I do to help them? I can incorporate a picture. Some of us are more visual learners. I always was. That's why to me having a picture label and the word I find can be really, really helpful for students. The options on BoardMaker are limitless. There are templates available for creating different activities and games, matching games for spelling words, different math games. So it doesn't just have to be for community, which I find to be great. On the left-hand side is a picture of a visual schedule that I made for a student in the past that was having some issues in the morning with their morning routine. And within a couple weeks of using this, they were able to really streamline the way they behaved in the morning, really get right down to work, and they barely really needed it after a little while. And it was just something that was so simple to implement, and I wish I had done it sooner. So I really do encourage people, if you are noticing that hard time, or they're not remembering the different steps to use the bathroom independently, or the correct way to work in the hallway, maybe it is something as simple as incorporating a visual element or an auditory reminder. So just really, again, and as we've been learning in this class, it's really, really, really important to look at our individual students and their needs, and sometimes these solutions are so simple and they're right under our nose, and you don't know if it's going to work unless you try it. So I think today, I'm sure there is something I left out about PECS, but it is definitely incredible. It's been around for a while, and I think that the research is showing that it's super helpful.